When somebody asks me for a book recommendation, I usually give them Winter's Tale by Mark Helprin. I was always a writer, but this is the book that turned me into a reader. But there's this whole other category of books. Books that I personally respect or got a lot out of, but which I never ever recommend to anybody. And that's the category of book that I'm going to talk about today. The uber type of this book, American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. American Psycho is a story of a narcissistic stockbroker in New York back in the 80s. And in some chapters, Ellis gives us first-person narration, telling you the details of every facet of this person's life. He talks about how he selects his clothes, how he selects his restaurants, how he judges the music he listens to, even how he gets up and gets ready for work every morning. In the shower, I use first a water-activated gel cleanser, then a honey almond body scrub, and on the face an exfoliating gel scrub. Vidal Sassoon shampoo is especially good at getting rid of the coating of dried perspiration, salts, oils, airborne pollutants, and dirt that can weigh down hair and flatten it to the scalp, which can make you look older. The conditioner is also good. Silicone technology permits conditioning benefits without weighing down the hair, which can also make you look older. On weekends or before a date, I prefer to use the Grunet Natural Revitalizing Shampoo, the conditioner, and nutrient complex. These are formulas that contain D-panathol, a vitamin B complex factor, polysorbate 80, a cleansing agent for the scalp. It goes on like that for pages. Every detail of this person's life, including his secret life, which is as a serial killer who inflicts terrible torture and murder on the people that he meets. You really have to think about, do I want to read this book? Once these images are in your head, you can't get them out. The reason why, in retrospect, I thought it was worth it for me was, first of all, the quality of the language. Hearing that juxtaposition between the details of this narcissistic life and the details of those awful deaths really made me respect the pacing and almost the hypnotic quality that Ellis brought to this person's life. I also really respected the fact that in this book, in my opinion, there are multiple interpretations which are all supported by the text. On one extreme side, you can say, hey, Patrick Bateman is a real character. Everything he does is meant to be taken literally. On the extreme other side, you could say Patrick Bateman doesn't even exist. He's a projection of one of the other characters, sort of an alter ego for one of the other characters. And of course, there's a whole spectrum in between where, yes, he exists. Some of the murders are real, some are imagined. By the end of the book, he's doing some things that can't seem to possibly have happened without him getting caught. And yet, he doesn't. This book is supposed to be that indictment of the 1980s, of that narcissistic culture that only the outside matters. And in a book this disturbing, a lot of times I think, was there any other way for the author to make this point? And in the case of American Psycho, I'm not sure there really was. I think he had to go here, and he did. But I wouldn't necessarily tell everybody that they need to read this book. I've read a couple of books by Martin Amis. The ones that you hear about, books like The Information or London Fields, I always respected the quality and inventiveness of the writing, even if I think some of them just don't age quite that well. But after he passed away, I wanted to read something that was maybe a little bit more of a deep cut. And so I got this book, Dead Babies. Now, there are no dead babies in this book, but there is just about everything else. In some ways, this book is a send-up of your classic Agatha Christie. It has a bunch of relatively privileged couples who go to in English country manner, they're going to have a weekend of making out and doing drugs. In other ways, this book is almost a precursor to the Bret Easton Ellis's The Less Than Zeros of the world, because the things that these people do to each other in the book, the drugs they take, the way they think about their own bodies, the activities, both consensual and non-consensual, that they undertake, are pretty awful. And throughout, there is a specter of someone else who might be watching them. Someone who is a different level of evil and might be planning something for these people that's even more awful than the things they have planned for each other. Now, I said there is no dead babies in this book, and there's not. Instead, dead babies is this phrase that Amos inserts into conversation extremely awkwardly to stand in for things that people just don't want to think about. They want to live this fantasy life in which themselves and their bodies, there is no tomorrow. And anytime reality or anxiety starts to set in, well, that's what they call dead babies. For instance, his tone had become confidently indignant, regretful. You think you know someone. You respect them as decent, genuine human beings, and then you find out they've still got these sick anxieties about something as trivial as, "No, Diana, you just hear me out here. No one's getting away with that kind of dead babies when I'm living in this house." I'm not sure anybody has to read Dead Babies. I mean, it is sort of that collision between the Bret Easton Ellises and the Agatha Christies of the world. And some of the things, especially at the end of the book, are truly shocking. But for me, this gave me a better window into Martin Amis and his writing style than something like The Information did. When he had all this pressure of being the next great thing and these huge advances, this is the book where he was like, I don't care what people think. I'm going to tell a story. And last, and maybe best, Geek Love by Katherine Dunn. When your mama was a geek, my dreamlets, Papa would say, she made the nippin' off of noggins such a crystal mystery that the hens themselves yearned towards her, waltzing around her, hypnotized with longing. Spread your lips, sweet Lil, they'd cluck, and show us your choppers. That is the first paragraph in a story that once you read it, you will not be able to get out of your head. It's a story of multiple generations of carnival freaks, a family who, when their carnival is failing, purposefully mutates their own offspring so they can create their own traveling freak show. And the story that might stick with you the most is the story of Arturo, one of their children who's born without arms and legs. And as the book progresses, he actually manages to create a cult around himself. Because if you can't take care of yourself, other people have to take care of you. In some ways, doesn't that make you the king? Doesn't that make you the boss? Now, the story of what people have to do as they rise up through the cult is something I'm not going to get into in this video, but it is something that if you choose to read the book, you won't be able to forget. And it's something that the children of this family can't forget either. Because in a second timeline, they are still facing the repercussions of their family's actions and learning to accept responsibility for raising their own children. So there you go. Those are 3 books that will push the boundaries of what you might find acceptable in what you might consider great literature. If you don't like them, just don't blame me. These are decisions you have to make for yourself.